There's a date circled on the calendars of people who understand how debt cycles work. A date when mathematics collides with political promises, when the can that's been kicked down the road for 50 years finally hits a wall it can't pass. That date is 2027, and it's not a prediction, it's a mathematical inevitability. By the end of this video, you'll understand why 2027 represents the breaking point, why we're currently in stage 4 of a 6-stage systemic collapse, and what stages 5 and 6 look like when they arrive. This isn't doom prophecy. This is pattern recognition backed by numbers that don't care about hope or politics or how badly we want the system to survive. Let me show you the mathematics of collapse. Every debt cycle in history follows the same pattern. 6 predictable stages that play out with mathematical precision. We've seen it in Rome, in Weimar Germany, in countless empires and currencies throughout time. And we're watching it unfold right now in real time. Except this time it's global. This time, it's the entire world financial system. And this time, the numbers are so large they've become incomprehensible. $315 trillion. That's the current global debt. Not national debt, not government debt, total debt, sovereign, corporate, household, all of it combined. To put that in perspective, global GDP is roughly 105 trillion. That means total debt is 3 times larger than the entire productive output of planet Earth. Think about what that means. The world owes 3 times more than it produces in a year. And this debt isn't shrinking, it's growing exponentially. In 2000, global debt was 100 trillion. In 2008, it was 160 trillion. Today, it's 315 trillion. We've added $155 trillion of debt in just 16 years. That's more debt created in 16 years than in all of human history before 2000. And the acceleration is speeding up because we're in stage 4. Let me break down the 6 stages so you understand where we are and where we're going. Stage 1 is the expansion phase, easy credit. Growing economy. Confidence is high. People borrow to invest in productive capacity. Businesses expand. Employment grows. The debt is sustainable because it's creating real value. This stage is healthy debt. It builds infrastructure, funds innovation, expands productive capability. The borrowing is backed by real growth. We were in stage 1 from the end of World War II until the early 1970s. The post-war boom, real growth, real productivity increases, real wages rising, debt levels were manageable relative to output. Stage 2 is the euphoria phase. Credit is abundant. Asset prices start inflating faster than productivity. People borrow not to produce, but to speculate. Real estate bubbles form. Stock markets disconnect from fundamentals. Debt grows faster than GDP. We entered stage 2 in the late 70s and 80s, financial deregulation, the beginning of financialization, the shift from industrial economy to finance-based economy. Debt started outpacing productive growth. Stage 3 is the sustainability question. Debt levels are now clearly higher than productive capacity can support, but central banks suppress interest rates to make the debt serviceable. The economy becomes addicted to cheap credit. Any attempt to normalize rates causes crisis. We hit stage 3 in the 2000s, the housing bubble, the credit explosion. The realization that without constant monetary stimulus, the whole structure would collapse. 2008 proved we couldn't survive without intervention. Stage 4 is financial repression. Central banks are trapped. They can't raise rates without crashing the system. They can't stop printing without triggering debt defaults. So they implement negative real interest rates. They suppress rates below inflation. They steal from savers to keep borrowers alive. This is where we are right now. Since 2008, we've been in full financial repression. Interest rates pinned to near zero while inflation runs higher. The Fed's balance sheet exploded from 800 billion to over 7 trillion. Money printing became permanent policy. And we're approaching the mathematical limit of stage 4. Because you can only suppress reality for so long before the gap between promises and resources becomes impossible to hide. This is where 2027 comes in. It's the convergence point where multiple mathematical walls hit simultaneously. First wall debt service costs. U.S. national debt is $36 trillion. Interest payments alone are now over $1 trillion per year. That's more than the defense budget, more than Medicare. Interest is becoming the single largest budget item. And rates are still relatively low. If rates rise to historical averages of 5 or 6%, interest payments would consume half the federal budget. There would be no money for anything else, just interest payments on old debt. But rates can't rise, because rising rates would trigger defaults. So the Fed is trapped. They must keep rates low, which means they must keep printing, which means inflation continues, which means purchasing power evaporates. Second wall pension underfunding. Public and private pension systems are underwater by tens of trillions globally. They made promises based on 7% annual returns. They're getting 3% in a financial repression environment. The shortfall grows every year, and there's no fixing it without admitting the promises can't be kept. which means either benefits get cut or governments have to print money to cover the gap. Either way, stage 5 approaches. Third wall demographic collapse. The baby boomer generation is retiring. Social Security, Medicare, healthcare costs are exploding. The ratio of workers to retirees is collapsing. Fewer people producing, more people consuming from the system. Japan is the canary in the coal mine. Aging population, massive debt. Decades of monetary stimulus, and now they're trapped in permanent zero rates with no way out. Europe is following the same path. China's demographics are even worse. America is 10 years behind, but on the same trajectory. Fourth wall dedollarization. The petrodollar system that's forced global dollar demand since 1973 is fracturing. Saudi Arabia now sells oil in UN. BRICS nations are building alternative payment systems. Central banks are dumping treasuries and buying gold. When global dollar demand falls, all those trillions parked overseas come flooding home. Hyperinflation, currency crisis, the end of dollar privilege. These four walls converge around 2027, not because of astrology or prophecy, but because of mathematical trajectories that are already locked in. The debt can't be paid, the pensions can't be funded, the demographics can't be reversed, the dollar monopoly can't be maintained. Something has to give, and when it gives, we enter stage 5. Stage 5 is the crack-up, the moment when everyone realizes simultaneously that the emperor has no clothes, that the debt won't be paid, that the promises won't be kept, that the currency is worthless. This happens fast, not gradually, suddenly. Because confidence is binary, it exists or it doesn't, and once it breaks, it's nearly impossible to restore. We've seen this in every major currency crisis. Weimar Germany, the confidence held until it didn't. Then hyperinflation went vertical in months. Zimbabwe, confidence held until it didn't. Then the currency became toilet paper. The trigger is usually something small, a failed bond auction, a sovereign default, a bank run, something that shouldn't matter but reveals the fragility underneath. And then the psychology shifts. If the government can't make payments, if pensions get cut, if banks close, if the currency devalues, everyone rushes to get out at once. This is the crack-up boom, the final manic phase where people desperately try to convert worthless currency into real assets, where prices detach completely from reality, where the velocity of money accelerates so fast that nominal prices become meaningless. Bread costs $1 million, then $1 billion, then $1 trillion. Not because bread is scarce, because the currency is dying. And this brings us to stage 6. Stage 6 is the reset, the moment when the old system is formally abandoned and a new system is imposed. Sometimes this happens through hyperinflation that destroys the currency completely, sometimes through a formal default and restructuring, sometimes through a new currency launch. But it always involves a wealth transfer. The people holding paper wealth lose everything. The people holding real assets survive. The middle class gets wiped out. The elites who saw it coming preserve or even expand their power. Germany after Weimar imposed a new currency, the Rentenmark, based on land. The hyperinflation stopped, but everyone's savings were worthless. Russia after the Soviet collapse, new currency, new system. Oligarchs grabbed state assets. Everyone else lost everything. Argentina has reset multiple times. Each time, peso holders get destroyed. Each time, dollar and asset holders survive. This is what 2027 likely represents. Not the crack-up itself, though it could be, but the visible approach of mathematical impossibility, the year when everyone can see the wall, even if they're still pretending we won't hit it. Current trajectories put several critical thresholds in the 2026 to 2028 window. U.S. debt to GDP exceeds 150%. Historically, this is the point where sovereign debt becomes unmanageable without dramatic intervention. Social Security and Medicare trust funds reach technical insolvency. The government either admits the programs are broke or prints to cover them. Several major economies, including Japan and several European nations, hit debt levels that require over 50% of tax revenue just for interest payments. The mathematical reality becomes undeniable. The political choice becomes unavoidable. Default or inflate, cut or print, collapse or reset. Most will choose reset, because it's politically easier to destroy the currency than to admit the promises were lies. So what does this mean for you? It means the window to prepare is closing fast. We're in late stage 4. Stage 5 could arrive tomorrow or take another 3 years. But it's coming. And when it arrives, when the crack-up begins, there won't be time to react. The banks will close before you can withdraw. The currency controls will be imposed before you can convert. The assets will be gone before you can buy. Your preparation must happen now, while things seem stable, while you can still move freely, while alternatives still exist. The people who survive resets aren't the ones who see it happening and react. They're the ones who see it coming and prepare before the crowd notices. Move wealth out of paper promises and into real assets. Gold, silver, land, productive businesses. Skills that create value regardless of currency. Reduce exposure to the banking system. Don't keep more in banks than you need for immediate transactions. Banks are counterparties in a failing system. Build resilience, food storage, energy independence, community networks, the ability to function when systems break down. Understand that 2027 isn't the end of the world. It's the end of a monetary system and the birth of whatever comes next. Those who are prepared will navigate the transition. Those who aren't will be swept away by it. In the final video of this series, I'm going to show you the survival portfolio, the 3 categories of assets that survive every reset, why billionaires are buying dirt and gold, and the exact strategy to move your wealth from the simulation into reality before the math catches up. If this video showed you the timeline we're on, leave a comment. With these words, stage 4 won't last forever. Share this with someone who still thinks the system can continue as is indefinitely, because the math doesn't care what we believe. It just calculates, and the calculation says change is coming. History has the answers. I'm just showing you where to look. See you in the final episode.